merry time of day. If you are watching this as it is getting released, it shall be the day before the winter solstice, at least here in these northern parts, and it is the darkest time of the year and a time that also carries a lot of stress and struggle and depression and family issues and all those sorts of things. And I've been thinking with how much growth the channel has had in the last couple of months and how many new faces we have and how many new community members, that I wanted to give something back. And what kind of thing can we give back in the darkest time of the year? Hopefully, it is a story about hope. And if this helps even one person, I will have been satisfied. Now, trigger warning, this video will consist of mentions of suicidal thought, suicidal intention, but so if that is not your cup of tea, no worries. Perhaps put this video away, find another one of mine. I have lots of cozy videos with no mention of this at all. No judgment, no worries. If you can come back to it later or never at all, don't worry. You take care of your own self. But as you can see, I can tell you it has a happy ending. I am still here so long after I thought I would be. So it is a story with some dark parts that are necessary, but I can promise you a happy ending. Sometimes in this society with a lot of pressure and external motivators, and people always told me that I had a brain, so I was obliged to use it. Like, it wasn't just you can use it to study science. It was sort of like you owe the world to use it to its full intention. That wasn't what they wanted to say, but that was how it came across a lot of the time, that you have an obligation to do this, like you need to use your brain appropriately, whatever that means. And I lived with that pressure for a long time. I studied science because we millennials were promised, a lot of us, that if you just go get an education, especially within STEM, science, technology, engineering, if you just get one of those educations, you're going to be set, you're going to have a job for life, and everything is going to be jolly good. Surprise, surprise, there is more nuance than that, and now we are overeducated, and everything is not quite as jolly good as we were promised. When I graduated university in 2012, there was an oil crisis in Norway, and a lot of the people working at the oil platforms and the oil rigs were being let go and needed to find jobs elsewhere. And of course, not only when you have work experience and time in the field and years behind you doing the thing, you are a lot more attractive than a freshly graduated student, but you also get a lot more sympathy because you have a house and a mortgage and a partner and maybe children, and a lot of these factors that as a single student renting, obligations that I didn't have. So I got passed over a lot and worked a lot of short-term contracts, as anything from making food in a cafeteria to being working at a nursery, to short-term gigs for friends who needed help with things. It was an interesting time, and it kind of divorced me, or separated me from that notion of there is such a thing as a safe job. I learned quickly that there isn't. There is no such thing as a safe education. And you get kind of frustrated because you did sacrifice other interests, creativity, to study the thing that was supposed to be safe, and yet it wasn't. But this is what you learned to do, and this is what you're supposed to be doing. So, don't follow the creative things, don't follow the art, because that is risky. Apparently that is different from the safe thing. But what I was quickly learning was that there is no safe path, especially when you're autistic. And I would get feedback from very well-meaning people who were running interviews, because I could often get an interview. I could write applications good enough to get me an interview, but I could not ace the interview. They would pick up on, those subconscious small autistic cues that you are a little bit different. I would get actually multiple emails or even phone calls from hiring managers or whoever was responsible for the hiring that they hadn't chosen me this time, but I had been their second choice, so I would get a job soon, don't you worry. Which stops being uplifting when it happens again and again and again and again and again. And even when I did my PhD, I was the second choice there too, but they were able to get funding for an additional PhD quite by chance, just by luck, because of the supervisor that I was collaborating with. So again, it was completely by luck. And that gets frustrating. I was struggling a lot with seasonal depression, have had for as long as I can remember. And when I was in university, it would be especially difficult towards the end of winter and early spring. You're so burnt out and so tired that you just don't know what to do with yourself. And I would just hold on to studying because I felt like I didn't have any value if I didn't make myself useful, which is a terribly toxic attitude to have. But that was the attitude that I had at the time, that, if I was a waste of resources, then I might as well not exist, which is not a good attitude, but capitalism. Am I right? And I was struggling with one of these seasonal depressions while I was towards the tail end, like the end of my PhD, when it struck me that, well, but if you have intentions of suicide anyway, then every day you don't, you get permission to just do the thing you want until you have used up all your resources and there is no more trying left. So because I am a frugal person and I get nervous when I don't have savings, because I've had no savings, no safety net for so long, we had saved up quite a bit towards the tail end of my PhD, because if you don't know it, in Norway, you basically get hired, you're considered an employee, and you get a completely decent, very average, good living wage. That is the most money I've ever earned, ever. And so we were able to set a lot of that aside because we were used to a much lower expenditure. And I was like, yeah, but why would I do something so drastic while I still have savings? I still have something. And that kind of flipped the switch in my head, where in the most positive intentions possible, it felt like, yeah, that is always an option. You can always do that tomorrow, the week after, further down the line. There's always a next time. You don't have to do, the big final conclusion today. You can postpone it. You can try to do the things that you've wanted to see if it would work, and there is no risk, because it kind of became this, yeah, but if it fails and we run everything into the ground, that is still an option, but not until then. I hope I'm managing to explain this in a way that makes sense, but it was this kind of positive realization that you can always do that tomorrow. You can always follow up on your suicidal thoughts next year. But while we are here and we still have savings, we still have energy, we are still able to produce something of the things that we want to do. We are still bringing people joy, hopefully. We still have friends. There are still people who care for us. While there are still resources without being sort of using other people. It's not what we want. It's not what I mean by having resources. But it was kind of like, if I do my best, and here's the key, if I do my best to do the thing that I want to do, then at least I will have tried. And if I will know in my own heart if I haven't actually been doing my best. And this is not about we are still trying to respect disability and chronic illness, and some days we have less energy, some days we have more. But that sort of became my attitude that we can always follow up on the suicidal thoughts at another time, but if we just do our best and we try to make it work the best we can, and we just keep trying every day that we still are able to pay the rent, we just keep trying and trying and trying and trying. And that gave me permission to start to grow a sort of audacity that I had never been able to use before, because it became this kind of like, I can be a fraud, I can have imposter syndrome, and it's fine because I have this one life to do the things that I've wanted to do, to write interesting stories, make videos, share cool science, make fun stuff, spend time with my friends, and just keep trying to do the thing. And I think it's important because I can see that I'm very privileged to have landed a job that gave us savings, that gave us a safety net where I was able to do these things, which I started this channel shortly after and have been, growing it ever since. So it's important for me to recognize that I have a lot of privilege in that I was able to have savings. So this video is not meant as I give you permission to give up if you have no more resources, because life is hard and people are poor and struggling. This is not like, I hope that my words will not be twisted in that way, because that is not the intention of this video. This video is more of I found a way to negotiate with my suicidal thoughts that was both productive and pushed the deadline further down the road. That is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm very, very lucky, and I hope to give you a tiny sliver of that audacity too, even if your situation looks nothing like mine. What I hope to do is kind of give you permission to try things. Because, I got to an age where spouse is now finding strands of silver in my hair. And some people find that scary, but I have to tell you, as someone who didn't think I would get this old, like if you had told teenage me that I would live long enough to get gray hairs, she would not have believed you. So what a gift to have been able to stick around for this long, because I did not expect that when I was younger. So this video is more about that, like figuring out ways to negotiate with the thoughts, kind of trying to find a way to twist something into a positive angle. Like, I think similarly around something that I call sort of tongue-in-cheek positive nihilism, where we know nihilism is that, we are nothing and nothingness and nothing matters. And that often sounds very negative, but I actually found a way to look at it that makes me feel incredibly liberated. Because a lot of us, again, at least as millennials, I don't know about other people in the audience, but we were told that we were going to change the world. And again, I was told that because I have a brain on my shoulders that works pretty well, I was expected to do something useful, quotation mark, with it. We were supposed to save the planet and do all this stuff. And there was all this pressure to like make a change and leave a big footprint. And again, all this kind of like, you have to be quote unquote perfect, or you have to stand out, and that leads to a lot of pressure, and can lead to a lot of just freeze response. You get just frozen and you don't want to do anything because there is just too many, like, what if I do it wrong? What if it isn't what I'm supposed to do? What if this path isn't the thing I'm supposed to do? What if I just try many different things and never find the one true thing I'm supposed to do? And it's like, but in the most loving, positive way I can try to phrase this, I don't matter, and that is amazing. I am just a tiny human on a tiny planet in a small part of the galaxy. I'm just a blip in the timeline. I'm not even a heartbeat in the time of this planet has existed here. I don't matter. Which means, since I don't really matter because I'm just one among billions, I am allowed to do the things that I find that I thought I couldn't, that I found scary, and or that weren't the safe choice, or that weren't the correct choice, or whatever have you. Again, it leads into that audacity that I learned from being able to negotiate with my depression, with my suicidal thoughts, that I am just this tiny human being among billions of others. So, and people, this is something that you learn, again, in positive connotation, especially if you live in a larger city, people generally care a lot more about themselves than they care about you. So if you feel like people are staring at you, or you feel like you're wearing something weird, or you move weird, a lot of the time, people don't really care. And that has been so liberating to me. Again, it feels like it gives me this permission to do all this fun stuff, because it's just a tiny life anyway. It's sometimes I feel like it's difficult to explain. Like, if people don't understand it, they find it very confusing, because they feel like it's only depressing to think that they don't matter. But for me to remove myself and be allowed to sort of push away that idea of you have to change the world, you are going to do this and that, and you're going to be the CEO of whatever. No. First of all, I don't want that. That sounds incredibly stressful. Do not want. My migraines would not be able to handle it. It would not be happy days. I tried academia, sharp elbows everywhere. I would either have to change myself to fit in there, or I would be severely burnt out, none of which seemed like a good time. So we decided to try something else, hence, hello, welcome to my channel. And I really want to give these discoveries, these things to you, the viewer, if anyone can take anything useful from it, I find it really liberating, and I hope someone finds it really liberating as well, and not just weird, or I'm not making any sense because I'm rambling back and forth about these ideas that slowly, it starts out as something that you have, you know it intellectually, is how I like to think about it. Like, I know a lot of people I admire, they really like Stoicism, so I've read a lot about that. And in the beginning, you're at the surface level, you've read the information, you're like, oh, that seems clever. And then over time, as you try to work on some of those ideas, you're able to pull one or two of them down, and you internalize them. And you start actually believing and living those things that you've been reading and repeating and thinking about. And you can't do too many at a time, because it is work to manage to get from up here where you're intellectualizing it, and then down here where you actually feel it in your emotions, in yourself, that this is true and this is part of how you live a life that feels right, that makes sense for you, that takes your conditions into consideration, and that whole spiel about following our true self, our true nature, or whatever, but trying to live a life that is in line with your values is what I kind of conclude that those things mean. It isn't about changing the world or being larger than life. It's about being a community member and trying to learn how to be in a bit of discomfort, and sometimes being maybe inconvenience, but trying to help out each other in the communities that we have, both online and offline, and sort of keep reading and trying to learn about things and try to develop as human, as people. And again, like try to like pull a few strands at a time to like work on things that can go from being intellectualized and down into actually internalizing them. And that is something that I have felt ever since I was a teenager. I would keep seeing that I would change from one year to the next. I would have changed in some way, and I would be able to pinpoint that, oh, I was really afraid of doing that back then, but now I don't really mind, or I have found methods to work around that, or I thought about this in this way, but now I think about it in this way. So whenever I would look back, I would always have felt like I was always me at every stage of life, but I kept changing. I just keep changing, and this is still something that I do today. I feel like I think it is Buddhism, or it is often attributed to Buddhism, the saying that the only true constant is change. Like the only thing we can depend on is that things will change, and I feel that deeply because I have been living it for as long as I can remember. And this channel does not look like it used to do when I first started it, does not look like it used to look 2 years ago, 1 year ago. So everything for me is just that things keep changing. But yeah, the main thing that I wanted with this video was kind of like, if you're having a tough time, if this time of year is difficult for you, know that you are not alone. There are a lot of us who get triggered and can have a bit of a hard time whenever there are especially big family events, times when you are supposed to be so happy and so jolly. And again, that creates a lot of pressure that makes people unable to do that, even if they want to, because they are just so distracted by the pressure of the happiness to be perfect, of the dinner to be perfect, and all those kinds of things. So you are not alone. It is okay to feel those pressures, but also know that it is okay to just ditch that pressure entirely and just have all the audacity. I have never cared much for things, which is very nice, but I kind of like to have mismatching plates and bowls and cups and things like that, and then you just invite your friends over and you have a large pot of soup or whatever and you share it. We did that when we moved to this place. We had a little moving in party and we just had to pull out everything remotely bowl shaped so that everyone would get a portion or as much as they wanted of the soup. And to me, that imperfection of the mismatching bowls and plates and cups, but everyone is having a good time, is so much more important to me than saying, I don't know, we can only invite 12 people because we only have 12 matching plates. Like, that makes no sense for me. That is just like tackling the problem from the wrong end. But yeah, that was one of the lessons that I have learned that in many ways contributed to me starting and then trying to run it as a full-time job, this channel, because life is short and you only get this one. Why not allow yourself to at least try to do a few of those things that you have been wanting to do without that pressure of you need to be Superman or Superwoman or super person and do 10 things at the same time and burn the candle at both ends and just burn yourself into the ground. Again, that is not what I am talking about. That is not what I'm trying to convey. I'm trying to have this balanced approach to life where I actually let myself rest when I need to. It's still a work in progress. That one is hard. But the community will always be letting me know whenever they feel like I'm apologizing too much for having been sick or having not been able to produce content or show up for certain things. And they are giving me a dose of my own medicine, which always tastes very different when you are giving it in return than when you try to tell others. But that we have to try to take our bodies and our mental health and our chronic health into considerations as well when we try to do all of those things. But yeah, If you are feeling like you are stuck, like you are in the end of the road, have you tried to do the thing that you want to do and figure out a way to do it for cheap? Like, I'm not talking about take up hundreds of thousands of debt and like start renting a shop and do XYZ, but if you have a dream that you've wanted to do a thing or many somethings, I've always been starting different projects because I like doing that, but if you have a thing that you wanted to do, can you do it on the side? Can you do it a little bit frugally? Can you find a way to do it that it won't get you into a lot of that? Because that is, again, not what we want either, but have you tried? Have you used up your resources? Have you given it your best? Have you also tried to be nice to your body and given it rest when you need to? I hope that I don't have too many ableist blinders with this one. I know that some people are very sick and it is very difficult to even do one thing in a day, and I hope this video doesn't put more pressure on you, because that is not what I want. But yeah, that's what has been on my mind these darkest days of the year, that I feel an immense amount of gratitude to our community that has suddenly grown quite a lot more than I had anticipated, and are such a vibrant and welcoming and nonetheless like intellectual, fun, discussing community. I will sometimes check in on the Discord and people are having in-depth conversations about history and textile science and textile history, or creative projects they are working on and brainstorming, and it always delights me when we can like engage in comments where I will post a little snippet of an interesting story that I found and someone will be able to supply more nuance, more information, or nuance that is in a different direction than I would normally get nuance, so they have other angles and we can discuss. And yeah, our community is such a diverse and knowledgeable and resourceful, creative bunch that it's just an honor to try to curate a space for you where we can all feel welcome, I hope, and strive on trying to learn new things and work on ourselves. And, the only constant is change, which means change is possible, even if things are dark. Thank you all for being here, and I hope you have an excellent next year, which is not that far away now. And thank you to our patrons, as always, whose support I sometimes wonder how I came to get so much support. But I'm very grateful that they are here, because that means that I can try to make videos like this where, again, if this helps even just one person find that seed of audacity and plant it and start working on it and start working on things that they wanted to do, it will have been worth it. Happy winter solstice.